Winter didn't ask permission, it just arrived. Temperatures fell far below anything we experience today. Some estimates suggest parts of Ice Age Europe dropped to -40 degrees. No heating, no jackets from a store, no walls built to keep the cold out, no supermarkets, no power grid, nothing waiting for them except open, freezing ground. Just skin, bone, and whatever the land happened to offer. And somehow, against every single odds stacked against them, our ancestors didn't just survive one winter like that. They survived thousands of them, one after another, for tens of thousands of years. This is how. No single trick saved them. It was never just one clever idea. It was layers. Ancestors built protection the same way we build a coat, piece by piece, layer by layer, until the cold simply couldn't get through anymore. Let's build that same coat, layer by layer, right now. Layer 1, fire. Humans had controlled fire for a very long time before the harshest winters hit. But during an ice age, fire stopped being a convenience. It became the difference between life and death. A single hearth could turn a freezing cave into a livable shelter. It cooked meat, which made it easier to digest and packed with more usable energy. It kept predators at a distance through the night. And it did something just as important. It kept people together, gathered in one warm circle, instead of scattered and alone in the dark. Losing a fire in the depths of winter wasn't a minor setback. It could be a death sentence for an entire group. Archaeologists have found ash layers meters deep in some caves, proof of fires kept burning in the exact same spot for generations. Fire wasn't just heat, it was the center of the whole camp. Layer 2, clothing. Not just animal hide thrown over the shoulders, actual, tailored clothing, sewn to fit the body. Scientists have found bone needles with tiny eyes, precise enough to thread with sinew, dating back tens of thousands of years. That single invention changed everything. A draped hide lets cold air sweep straight through the gaps. Sewn clothing seals them shut. Layered correctly, furs and skins trap warm air close to the body. That's the exact same principle your own winter jacket uses today. Some researchers even think this one invention may have mattered more than almost anything else. Groups who could sew fitted, wind-resistant clothing had a real advantage, especially in the harshest, coldest stretches of the Ice Age. A needle sounds small. It very likely saved lives, one stitch at a time. Layer 3, shelter. And not always the kind you'd expect. In parts of what's now Ukraine and Russia, archaeologists have uncovered something remarkable. Circular huts built almost entirely out of mammoth bones. Skulls stacked as a foundation. Tusks curved upward to form the frame, likely covered over with hides for insulation. Building one of these took real planning. It meant collecting bones from dozens of animals, arranging them with real structural logic, not just piling them randomly. Some shelters were even partly dug into the ground. The earth itself holds heat better below the surface, out of the direct biting wind. Some of these huts held together for years, reused winter after winter by the same or nearby groups. This wasn't improvised, this was architecture, built from whatever the land had left behind after a hunt, engineered specifically to survive a season that could otherwise kill everyone inside without it. Layer 4, fat, specifically finding enough of it. In extreme cold, the human body burns through calories at a brutal rate just to stay warm. Lean meat alone can't keep up with that demand. In fact, eating only lean meat in freezing conditions can be genuinely dangerous. It's a real phenomenon, sometimes called rabbit starvation. The body simply can't process enough protein fast enough, without enough fat alongside it. That's exactly why fat-rich animals like mammoths, reindeer, and bison mattered so much. Hunting one wasn't just about meat. It was about hunting the single most calorie-dense fuel source available in a landscape that offered almost nothing else. Every successful hunt meant a full store of fat, and a full store of fat could mean the difference between a family that made it through winter and one that didn't. Layer 5, each other. None of the first 4 layers worked especially well alone. A single hunter could rarely bring down a mammoth by themselves. A single family, huddled by one small fire, loses heat far faster than a larger group sharing the same space. So people gathered. Winter camps often grew larger, not smaller. Multiple families pulled into the same shelter, sharing warmth, sharing food, sharing the risk. Body heat itself became a resource, shared simply by staying close together through the coldest nights. Hunting became a coordinated group effort, driving large animals toward waiting hunters, rather than relying on one person's spear alone. A lone individual in an Ice Age winter faced brutal odds. A group faced them together. Cooperation wasn't a nice idea. It was a survival strategy, tested by the coldest, harshest season nature could produce. Layer 6. Knowing what was coming. Winter didn't arrive as a surprise. Groups tracked the seasons closely. They watched the daylight shorten. They watched herds begin their migrations. They watched for the first frost on the ground. That knowledge meant preparation could start months in advance, not the week the first snow actually fell. Meat could be dried or frozen and stored. Furs could be prepared early. Camps could be moved deliberately to sheltered valleys or closer to reliable herds well before the hardest weather arrived. Some groups likely passed this seasonal knowledge down deliberately, almost like an oral survival manual, refined generation after generation. This is easy to overlook because it isn't a tool you can hold in your hand. But reading the land and acting on it early was arguably the layer that made every other layer possible in the first place. So, how did ancient humans survive brutal winters? Not with one invention, not with one stroke of luck. Fire for warmth and safety. Clothing sewn to actually trap that warmth. Shelter engineered from whatever the land provided. Fat for the fuel the body desperately needed. Each other because no one layer worked well completely alone. And foresight to have every other layer ready before the cold ever arrived. 6 layers, none of them perfect by themselves. Together, they were enough to carry an entire species through thousands of brutal winters, one after another, for tens of thousands of years. That coat we started building at the beginning of this video, you're looking at the finished version of it right now. Every single one of us is here today because that coat held. Every layer worked, generation after generation, in conditions most of us will thankfully never have to face ourselves. So here's something worth sitting with. Out of those 6 layers, fire, clothing, shelter, fat, cooperation, or foresight, which one do you think mattered the most? Which one would you have struggled with the most yourself? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you'd pick. What? If this gave you a little more respect for the people who came before us, subscribe. There's a lot more of this ancient world worth uncovering, and I'll see you in the next one.